I really didn't know very much about them at all. I'd heard of them kind of vaguely, but you know, they're obviously a huge deal in the UK and everyone kind of knows about them there, but in Australia where I grew up, the myth wasn't quite as prevalent. I was kind of careful about it because I think there are so many stories out there about them, and I'm sure some of them are true, and I'm sure some of them are absolute rubbish, and it was kind of, I didn't want to sort of get bogged down with all of that different kind of conflicting information. So it was more about talking to Brian about it really, and you know, he'd kind of picked the parts of the story that he wanted to use, and I was just sort of, I trusted him enough to kind of go along with his version of the story. She says at the beginning of the film that when she's on her first date with Reggie, she says, I'll do anything to get out of the East End. I don't just want to, you know, push a pram and be haggling with the butcher. She doesn't want to be a housewife, essentially. And I think when she first meets him, she sees something sort of glamorous and exciting about him, and she feels like maybe he'll be her escape from that world. And then obviously, you know, I think she kind of turns a blind eye to the darker side of his personality at first, and then obviously she can't ignore it forever, and that's what tears them apart in the end. That clicked into place a lot quicker for me. It was a lot more, I knew what the formula was with our relationship a bit more. That was easy and kind of natural for me, and it made sense to me. You know, their storyline was sort of a bit more, I kind of knew exactly how to approach that relationship. Francis's relationship with Ron was a different story completely. I actually think that they're more, I mean, they're very, very different personalities, but they have a little more in common than Francis does with Reggie, because they're both operating on another kind of level of consciousness. They're both like a little bit spacey and a little bit out there. And acting opposite Tom as Ron was a little more difficult to figure out. You know, I kind of had to be on my toes a little bit more. He would ad-lib a lot, and it was fun, actually. It was probably even more fun acting with him as Ron, just because I never knew what was going to happen. A few people have asked me if it was really challenging for me and if it was confusing, but honestly, he did such a good job of clearly defining each of these characters that, you know, we shot in a weird way. Obviously, we would shoot with him as Reggie and then shoot with him as Ron. So technically it was a bit strange, but other than that, it was like working with two different actors, so it was kind of, it wasn't too complicated for me. It was Tom fighting with Jacob, who's his stunt double, but who also would play whatever role Tom wasn't playing at the time. And Jacob was so much a part of the film that watching the film the first time, it was actually like, oh, where's Jacob? Why isn't he in it? You know, which was kind of bizarre because he was such an important person on set. So really it was them fighting, and Tom was Reggie first, and then he switched into Ron, and Jacob would play whoever he wasn't playing. But really it was a brutal fight. Like, they were really, really going for it. It's difficult for me to sort of express verbally because it's so much about gut instinct. I just thought it was an incredibly, I mean, it's a cool script and it's a really interesting script, but I think that Francis was a really beautifully written character. And it was just that gut feeling of I want to bring this person to life. I don't know what it is, but I just want to be a part of this. And also, obviously, Tom was attached at that point, and that was a big draw for me because I've been a big fan of his for a long time. I stupidly actually watched Locke the night before we started shooting, and I watched it. I went to see it at the cinema with a friend, and I was like, oh no, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to sort of keep up with this person because he's just so engaging. Bronson as well is like one of my favorite films anyway, but I don't know what makes him so good. I think part of it is just, you know, a lot of it is just God-given talent, but I think part of it is the fact that he really, really cares about what he's doing, and he never phones it in, and he just wants the work to be really good. And I love, it's so nice being around that energy when you're making a film because it makes you up your game. You know? I think maybe there was slightly less pressure on me just because Francis is an even more mysterious figure than the Crazer. You know, there's a lot less information out there about her. So I I didn't have this strong idea of her in my head. I was able to kind of find bits and pieces and figure it out with Brian and then kind of create my own version of her. But definitely, you know, like I said, Brian said that this is his fairy tale version of the story, and we can't really know what actually transpired and what was true. And I don't know what she was like in real life, but I do hope that I was able to kind of do her justice and sort of capture her spirit to some degree. The 60s is one of my favorite eras for fashion, so that was kind of a dream for me. That was really lovely. And also Caroline, our costume designer, was incredible. She has such an amazing eye, and she had really great tailors, so everything was just kind of perfectly fitted, and it was great. It was a nice that was a really enjoyable, you know, sort of light, fun part of making the film. It was a nice balance to sort of the dark subject matter of the story. I was really glad to find out that Tom's not a method actor. I mean, he was sort of joking around as Ron in between takes, but it's very different to, you know, to say someone who's entirely in character the whole time. That's not me at all. I think I would lose my mind if I tried to stay in character, so it's nice to be able to sort of have jokes in between takes. And it was a really easy cast and crew, and I feel like it was really fun to make the film. And even when we were working on these really dark scenes, we had a really good time. He wrote such an incredible script, and I always feel more comfortable being directed by someone who's written the script that I love, because I know that, you know, it's his vision on the page that attracted me to the story. So to know that it's not going to change too much from that is very comforting. You know, I trusted him with the story because he wrote the story.
Yeah.